The goal is to move the whales as quickly as possible. Because their skeletons are not designed to support their massive bodies out of water, speed is essential. Even a small calf like number 7 might not hold up under the stress.
Easy. Easy. Easy.
And if the convoy is delayed, the animals could go into shock or die. The team is especially worried about whale number 1.
Here we go. Big breath. 1, 2, 3.
At about 1,200 pounds, he faces the greatest medical risk.
Come on, baby, breathe. Can you coming forward?
Finally, the whales are safe in their new home. And the calf has held up surprisingly well. But as they feared, the move has taken a physical toll on number 1.
Catching up with everybody right now.
Okay.
Number 1's getting his.
So we have to have him in by 10.
3 days after the move, the big male loses his battle and draws his last breath. After just 3 weeks, the group that numbered 7 whales is down to 5. All of them stressed by the move. The goal of releasing them now seems like a distant dream. In Seattle, it's been months since Ken Balcom witnessed the sonar exercise in Puget Sound. To his relief, none of the killer whales actually stranded during or after the May 5th event, and J-Pod seems to be okay. But 9 porpoises washed up in the inland waters of Washington State in the weeks after the exercise. A higher than average number. The U.S. government launched an investigation into the deaths. The scientists discovered that some of the animals died from natural causes, and they found no evidence of harm from sonar in any of the stranded porpoises. But according to their report, some of the animals were too decomposed to yield definitive results. And even in those that could be studied, the scientists could not rule out underwater sound as a contributing factor.
Here you go. There we go, 2 of them.
Fueled by uncertainty, the debate over sonar has become contentious, pitting navies against environmental activists around the world. Some argue that sonar is a relatively small problem, that toxins, fishing nets, and habitat degradation are the real killers. But the issue of sonar is not likely to disappear until its effects are truly understood. In the meantime, the Navy must, by law, avoid harassing whales, a task that will be easier when science provides more answers.
I think that the next year or so will bring tremendous progress in understanding what's going on and developing methods that will enable the Navy to do its job and also enable us to protect the environment.
The Navy is now anticipating warfare close to our shores instead of on the deep ocean. And so their exercises tend to be in shallower water where most of the marine mammal populations are. So we're seeing more interactions between sonar and marine mammals now than we used to see. But certainly they can coexist. And we can cut down the number of deaths that we're seeing by carefully avoiding areas where we know marine mammals concentrate.
One of those areas is Puget Sound, Ken Balcom's doorstep.
I definitely understand Ken's viewpoints on sonar. Twice now he's had a major study site of his interrupted by sonar. And I think that if I were him, I would probably be encouraging the Navy to work elsewhere as well.
In February 2004, the Navy said it would avoid using sonar in Puget Sound when orcas are present. A small sign of hope for Ken and perhaps for the whales.
Okay, come on in. Everybody kiss number 3.
In Florida, the big day has arrived. The pilot whales are now well enough to be released. NOAA has decided to release little number 7. If all goes well, it may be the youngest pilot whale ever returned to the wild.
Making a decision whether or not to release him was agonizing. No one's certain if he'll be able to find food on his own. But we're really hoping that we're putting him in a situation where he can learn from these other whales how to feed himself.
Over the past 2 months, number 7 has bonded with 3 other whales and is especially close to the oldest, number 2. The young whale is also eating fish, even live fish. But of all the whales, the youngster will face the greatest risks when it is returned to the ocean, especially if it gets separated from the group.
The lone pilot whale doesn't have a very good chance at survival. We're going to be monitoring him very closely using a satellite tag, and if we see that he's having any problems out there, we're going to be there to recover him if necessary.
The biggest challenge is preserving the new pod's essential bonds. Number 7 and the whales he is closest to will ride together on this barge, which has been specially modified to support them. For Rick, this is a bittersweet moment.
Everybody is excited as can be and preparing for the other part of this, which is the sadness of seeing some friends go away once and for all.
With volunteers, scientists, veterinarians, and the press, the flotilla numbers more than a dozen vessels, bound for the release point some 14 miles out to sea. The plan is to release all the whales at one time. Everything depends on whale number 2, the likely pod leader. She's the glue that holds the group together. Just a few miles from their destination, whale number 6 stops breathing. If she dies, the group will be smaller and more vulnerable as it swims to freedom. To reduce the stress on the whale, they submerge one end of the barge. And the waters of the Atlantic Ocean flood in. For long moments, the volunteers hold their breath. Then whale number 6 finally takes one of her own. When the boats reach their destination, a quiet sense of jubilation descends on the volunteers. history of strandings, a unique moment is at hand. The simultaneous release of 5 pilot